with the chili was going, I was thinking outside in front of the shack. Yeah, hi.
A very pleasant evening to all of you. It's my pleasure to extend a cheerful welcome to you all. Your presence makes us very happy. Never bend your head, always hold it high. Look the world straight in the face and know. I'm Ms. Chandni Roshni, working as Assistant Professor, Department of Economics, Guru Shree Shantivijai Jain College, Women. I am honored to render my heartfelt welcome to our chief guest, Dr. Ijaz Ghani, former economic advisor, World Bank, Washington, D.C. Welcome, sir. And I also welcome all the faculty members and my fellow students to an 2 days international webinar titled uh, Gender Disparities in Economic Activities, organized by Department of Economics in association with the Center for Women Empowerment Cell, Guru Sri Shanti Vijay Jain College for Women. Man is made by his belief, as he believes, so he is. Bhagavad Gita. Prayer gives us power and positivity. Let us commence this informative and beneficial session by seeking the Almighty's blessings. warm welcome makes the program more special. It's a privilege to extend a cordial welcome. May I request Dr. Yashoda Margaret, Head Department of Economics, to render a gracious welcome and read the credentials of our guest. Thank
A very good evening to all. On behalf of Department of Economics and Center for Women Empowerment, Jain College for Women, I welcome all the participants for this 2 days international webinar. First and foremost, I thank the Lord Almighty for creating this day. I also thank our management, our honorable correspondent, and honorable principal for giving us this opportunity to organize this 2 days international webinar on the topic gender disparities in economic activities. In this special occasion, it's my pleasure to welcome our Honorable Resource Person, Dr. Izzaz Ghani, former Economic Advisor, World Bank, Washington, D.C. On behalf of our college, we are thankful to you for devoting your valuable time for our students. Definitely, our students would be benefited by your thought-provoking lectures, sir. I would like to extend a warm welcome to our Honorable Correspondent, Dr. Gautam P. Baiser, and Honorable Principal, Dr. M.K. Malidi ma'am. I wholeheartedly welcome Ms. Chandini Roshini, Assistant Professor, Department of Economics, and also I would like to welcome Student Secretary of Economic Association, Economist Forum Beyond Book Clubs, and Student Secretary of Center for Women Empowerment for this webinar. I hope this webinar would be very helpful to all the participants, especially our students, to have further knowledge in gender disparities. So I welcome all the participants for this webinar. Now let me introduce our chief guest. I am greatly delighted to take this opportunity to introduce him. Dr. Izzaz Ghani, an Indian national, is prominent economist in economic policy and debt prem network in the World Bank. He has worked in Africa, East Asia, South Asia, corporate strategy, and independent evaluation unit. He has written an economic growth, macro policies, poverty, employment, entrepreneurship, urbanization, gender, trade, and decentralization. He has been a consultant in ILO, United Nations Conference of Trade and Development, and UNICEF. He taught economics at St. Anne's College, Oxford University, and Sri Ram College of Commerce, Delhi University. He has completed MPhil and DPhil in economics from Oxford University. He did his schooling in Bihar, Bachelor of St. Stephen's College, and Masters at Jawaharlal Nehru University, India. He has edited several books, including Reshaping Tomorrow, Is South Asia Ready for the Weekly? Oxford University Press 2011, The Poor Hawk Billion in South Asia, Oxford University Press 2010, The Service Revolutions in South Asia, Oxford University Press 2010, Accelerating Growth and Job Creation in South Asia, 2009, and Promoting Economic Cooperations in South Asia in 2009, and Growth and Regional Integration in Macmillan 2007. We are honored by your presence on the occasion, sir.
May I take the pleasure of requesting our chief guest, Dr. Ijaz Ghani, sir, to deliver the speech and enlighten our minds.
By saying that when I was approached to give the seminar, I was thrilled. The honor is mine to give the seminar on gender disparities. I have been trying to push the various research institutes in India to hold a seminar on this, but it hasn't really worked. When I send the PowerPoint, my request to you is that the Center for Women Empowerment need to align more and coordinate with Niti Aayog, NIPFP, ICRIA, Pune International Development Center. In the PowerPoint that I sent to Yashoda, I have copied the people who are heads of different research institutes. And my request to you is that after this seminar, take the PowerPoint, modify it, change it as you wish, and send it to the head of, and put it in the name of Center for Women Empowerment, your center, and send it to the different research centers in India and ask them to hold a seminar. It's very important to mainstream the gender agenda in the policy dialogue in India. The gender agenda is most of the time missing, and that's not a good thing, because not only for ethical, political reasons, but for economic reasons. Imagine 50% of the labor force, which is women, can double the economic growth in India if they become an integral part of the economic agenda. Gender will be the new economic growth driver for India for the next 4 decades. And this will come in many forms. First, the most important is the increased female labor force participation. The second is improved access to banking and land and housing, higher level of political representation, and empowering half of the potential labor force has significant economic benefits for India. So, my suggestion is the Center for Women Empowerment should integrate and motivate the other research institutes in India, including Niti Aayog, the planning, the Ministry of Finance, all of them to join hands in pursuing this agenda. So the question that I want to ask is, India is one of the fastest growing economies in the world. Has this reduced gender disparities in India? And we are going to use the household data, the enterprise data, and we are going to look at the 600 districts in India and all the states to see if gender disparities have been reduced over the last several decades. And the World Bank and IMF and global institutions have always argued that structural reforms and policy liberalization will increase economic growth as well as reduce gender disparities. It's assumed that economic growth and rise in income will reduce disparities. We will examine the evidence to see if it has actually reduced discrimination against women and gender gaps. India has carried out huge structural reforms to promote economic growth. It has it has liberalized the trade policy, the industrial policy, uh, and despite all of this, the share of women in entrepreneurship is larger in what we find when we examine the 600 districts. A couple of things stand out. Unfortunately, the market competition and liberalization and rapid economic growth in India has not reduced the gender segmentation in India. This is very important to realize. This can hit the headlines that despite the rapid economic growth, gender disparities have not been reduced in India. And this cannot be overlooked. And we can dig all the microdata to back this up. And that's what we did. If I may go now to the next slide, you can see it that India's progress on reducing gender disparities has only worsened. What we find is when we look at gender patterns by industry, we examined, where are the women employed, which industries attract women more. Uh, we compared the manufacturing sector and services sector, and what we find that more women are employed in tobacco products, wearing apparel, textiles. They attract the largest count and share of women entrepreneurs in India. And these industries are known to have lower requirements of physical labor. So it's not surprising that women are attracted more to textiles and tobacco products because the physical labor involved is less. What about the services sector? It is here we find that there are more women in education, sewage, refuse disposal, sanitation, financial intermediation services. This attract the largest share of female entrepreneurs and broadly also the largest count and share of female employees and enterprises. But the female activity is concentrated in informal, unorganized, small enterprises. They do not have a big presence in the large enterprises. In the formal sector, very small presence. So the share of female owned enterprises in the unorganized sector is much larger in manufacturing than in services. This was a bit surprising finding because India has a large services sector, and India has benefited from a huge digital service revolution, but the share of women in this service revolution has been small and limited. Now let's look at what about entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is the formation of new enterprises. Is how big is the gender gap in entrepreneurship? How many women establish new enterprises compared to men? And here the what we find is that the India's gender composition. Uh, now let me step back and say, why did we choose entrepreneurship? When we examined who creates jobs in India or in USA, we find that it is new enterprises which create more jobs, not old established enterprises. So the more the number of women entrepreneurs, the more the number of jobs for women that will be created. And we'll discuss this again. But what we find is the striking thing is the gender composition of jobs has not changed much in India despite rapid growth. The share of females in manufacturing employment has increased only marginally, but it has increased substantially in services. More female workers are finding services to be a better or a more available employment avenue compared to manufacturing. The concentration of female entrepreneurs in low wage industries has grown over time. Women entrepreneurs in the unorganized manufacturing sector are more dominated in industries that pay lower wages, not high wages. The association of the women entrepreneurs in unorganized sector with low wages stands out in India. Um, I mean, the role of women entrepreneurship is going to be very important for the future. And the business school associated with the Center for Power empowerment, gender empowerment, need to look much more on the what can be done to promote women entrepreneurship. Gender of the gender of the owner of an enterprise overwhelmingly predicts the gender of the employee. If the owners of new enterprises are women, they will employ more women. I mean, that's the basic fact, and therefore the growth of women entrepreneurship in future becomes very important. Industries that show higher rates of female entrepreneurship and employment are also broadly the industries that show the highest segmentation in terms of female employees being matched to female owners. Gender segmentation in India is remarkably heightened in female plants in the sense that the female owned enterprises in India hire more women, and the men owned enterprises in India hire more men. So, this segmentation is found both in manufacturing and services sector, both in informal small enterprises and formal large enterprises. And but it is within services, it has increased in the postal and communication and real estate services. So gender segmentation is prominent in entrepreneurship. An interesting question, and this is important, is which states in India have the highest number of women entrepreneurs? And here, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, and West Bengal stand out among the states that have the highest number of women entrepreneurs in both manufacturing and services. The states with the lowest women entrepreneurs are my state, Bihar and UP. They have no women entrepreneurs. And two out of the top four states with the highest count of women employed in manufacturing and services are from South India, Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh. Given that Tamil Nadu is probably the success of women entrepreneurship in India, your center should pick this up, this flag, and raise it high to bring the rest of India to follow it. And therefore, you're taking a bigger leap in coordinating with other institutes and universities will play a critical role in India. Uh, a question one would ask is over the last 2 decades, have we seen the different states in India, say Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Bihar, and UP, converging in the gender gap? Convergence is when if if Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh can reduce gender gaps, are the other states like Bihar and UP are they also reducing gender gaps? If both of them reduce gender gaps, then there is a convergence in gender gap, meaning it's being reduced all across India. But the evidence shows that the gender gap has not converged over India. It has, if anything, diverged. So that's not a good sign. What about urbanization? India is one of the fastest urbanizing countries in the world. And urbanization is associated with economic growth and job creation. Most of the enterprises locate in urban areas, and enterprises benefit from knowledge spillovers, um, eh, agglomeration economies, economies of scale. All of them help, to promote growth, but has the urbanization that has promoted growth, how has it impacted the gender gap? What we find is that the share of women owned enterprises has declined with the distance away from the big seven cities in India. So most of the women owned enterprises, as you go further away from Madras, for example, you'll find fewer and fewer women owned enterprises. That's a thing that holds across all major cities. Female owned share has declined with distance from big seven cities in the services sector. Now, notice there is a difference. In the services sector, women owned enterprises are much more in the closer to the mega cities. But in the manufacturing sector is de-urbanizing and moving out of mega cities to rural areas to remain competitive. We don't find many women owned enterprises. So, the big issue that we need to discuss today is what can be done to reshape the role of gender as a growth driver and to reduce the gender gap. And here we'll have to proceed, but the thing to keep in mind is the assumption was that if India has high growth, it will lift all tides and reduce the gender gap because it will create more jobs for both men and women. But the evidence from the last 2 decades has shown that the rapid economic growth has not reduced the gender gap. Now, that's a concern. If so, we cannot just rely on faster economic growth to reduce gender disparities in India. More direct actions need to be taken, and more direct actions will depend on which state. There is no one formula for all the states to take direct actions to reduce gender disparities. But there are successful examples. Mrs. Indira Gandhi announced 30% of the reservations in the local panchayat elections for women. And we examined that, and we found that those states and districts which implemented 30% of political representation for women reduced gender disparities and empowered women more. So that's one successful example. I'm sure we can find many more successful examples. I mean, the key message for the Prime Minister and the center is gender based segmentation has not subsided in India. India's gender balance in entrepreneurship and jobs remain the lowest in the world. The share of women entrepreneurs in India is lower than the share of women entrepreneurs in sub Saharan African countries. That's not the shining India. Uh, Improving the gender balance is the first step for India's development and its achievement of greater economic growth and gender equality. While achieving economic equality sometimes requires tough choices like more taxation, achieving gender equality and reducing gender segmentation is a very easy policy action to take. I think this seminar is an eye opener for all of us because 500 million women cannot be overlooked, ignored. Imagine if 500 million women join the labor force, India's economic growth can double. Let me stop here and I'm ready to answer and discuss questions and answers. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your thought-provoking address. The session is open for question and answer session. Viewers, if you have any questions, you can post your queries in the chat box. We have a question, sir. Sir, you said if we increase the women labor force participation, then uh, then quality development will take place. But according to labor force participation rate survey 2017, African countries saw what?
I mean, there is some truth in this. I mean, the women's labor force. I mean, this is true also for India. The women's labor force participation. There are two sectors in India: the unorganized informal sector, which has low wages, and the formal organized sector, which has higher wages, better quality. The women's participation in India has marginally increased in the unorganized sector. But that did not lead to quality improvement because the unorganized sector has lower wages. We did not see an improvement in the organized sector. Remember, the labor force participation in India is also increasing. India adds 5 million more women to the labor force every year. But the number of jobs being created, both in the organized and unorganized sector, are not employing the additional 5 million women who join the labor force. So, labor participation is not increasing as a share of labor, nor the quality is improving because it expanded only in the unorganized sector where wages are low.
And she has asked a follow-up question. Development, even though their women participation in work is more than global average. So my question is, what are they missing?
I Are you saying that the women participation in India is more than the global average? If that's the question, I don't think the empirical evidence backs that women participation in the labor force in India has increased. I haven't seen the global average data, but why should women in India be held back if the global average itself is bad? 500 million women in India have equal right and they should become the front runners in the labor force participation. What is missing, and India has a lot of things to do to scale up women's participation.
It was the continuation of the first question she has asked. So, and one more question that we have. So you said women entrepreneurs are less in urban than rural. Is it because of financial reason or social stigma, or if any other reason, please state it and allow and also tell us the way to overcome it.
Okay, a couple of clarifications. We don't find, we find women entrepreneurs more in urban areas than in rural areas. The stigma is both in the urban and rural areas against women, but it is less in urban areas and there is more stigma in the rural areas. But women entrepreneurs don't just thrive on stigma, they also need the physical and human infrastructure to promote their enterprises. And they need access to banking. But what has happened is the number of male enterprises have grown rapidly in the urban areas, thanks to improvement in physical infrastructure, some improvement in human infrastructure. But the number of women enterprises in the urban areas has not grown as much. How to overcome it? The most important reason is that India has scaled up and improved physical infrastructure. But the human infrastructure, the education, the health, this needs to be scaled up. The more the education, the greater will be the gender equality. Women need to feel safe in the cities and rural areas. The household responsibility also needs to be discussed, and the gender gap in household responsibility needs to be reduced. Only women cannot do all the household work, take care of children. If they do that, then they don't have time to set up their own enterprises and follow jobs. So this work of household responsibilities also has to be divided. So we have to go state by state, and besides improving the economic and social infrastructure, we also need to improve the social infrastructure, the political infrastructure, so the gender gap can be reduced.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions? Yes, sir. We have one more question. Sir, do you said literacy rate and women development are directly proportional? If so, how come Kerala state isn't in the top list of women?
Uh, it is not just the uh, human infrastructure. Human infrastructure is the health and education. So Canada may be more advanced in literacy, but we also need other factors like the physical infrastructure, roads, electricity, internet. And in addition, it helps if Tamil Nadu already had more women entrepreneurs than Kerala, then women tend to employ more women. And Tamil Nadu can go ahead of Kerala just because it had the initial advantage.
Yes.
But generally, the debate is not between Kerala and Tamil Nadu or Andhra Pradesh. The southern states have done better in gender empowerment. But the northern states, including Delhi, UP, Bihar, Haryana, the gender gap is worse. So we need to proceed, but not that the Tamil Nadu and Kerala don't need to do more. They need to do a lot more. But at national level, we need to push the northern states, which are completely lagging behind the southern states. And Tamil Nadu and Kerala can provide successful examples to the rest of India on how it can uplift the whole country.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions? I think we are done with the session, sir.
Sure. Any questions from the faculty members?
Yes, sir. We have Yashoda ma'am, our head has been asked one question you have answered already, sir.
Okay. What are your thoughts and how do you plan to take this agenda forward on reducing gender disparities?
Sorry, sir, I didn't get you.
What is the center doing? Center for Gender Empowerment. What are the plans of the center to scale up the role of women in the economy?
We have planned certain workshop so that they can empower themselves after they leave the college, and as well as we give workshop for the outsiders as well to empower themselves to face the outside world.
Sounds
That
very
is
good.
what we have planned so far,
Okay.
and we cannot do great things on this earth, only small things that great love. Saying Mother Teresa, saying thank you is more than good manners, it is good spirituality. May I call upon Ms. Amrin Banu, Student Secretary of Economics Foreign Beyond Books, to propose the vote of thanks.
Gracious evening to one and all gathered here. I'm A. Ambin Bano, pursuing second year Bachelor of Commerce Shift 1. On behalf of Guru Sri Shantivijai Jain College for Women, I deem it a great honor and privilege to propose the vote of thanks on this 2 days international webinar. Let me first of all start by giving glory to the Almighty God for making today's webinar a resounding success. First and foremost, I thank our distinguished chief guest, Dr. Izaz Ghani, former economic advisor, World Bank, Washington, D.C., where despite their busy schedule has found time to grace this occasion. And I extend my heartfelt thanks to our Honorable Secretary and Correspondent, Dr. Gautam P. Ved, sir, for his aid and guidance as always encouraged us. I thank him for his kindness, hospitality, interest, and continuous support. I owe special gratitude to our well-wisher principal, Dr. N.K. Malti ma'am, for her support, vision, and commitment. My heartfelt thanks to Vice Principal, Dr. S. Cicely ma'am, for her words of encouragement. My special gratitude to HOD, Department of Economics, Dr. Yashoda Margaret ma'am, for organizing 2 days international webinar. And I also thank Shantini Roshni ma'am, Assistant Professor of Economics, for her contribution and guidance in all our efforts. I thank all the distinguished invitees present here accepting our invitation. Last but not least, I thank all my comrades for your cooperation in making today's webinar a resounding success. Finally, I leave you this inspiring quote by Martin Luther King. If I cannot do great things, I can do small things in a great way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amrin.
Thank you.
Let's conclude the session with the national anthem.
जन गण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्छल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगल दायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you. I can leave now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Participants and viewers, please fill the feedback link and you can get your certificates after completing 2 days international webinar. Today, that is today and tomorrow, you have to fill both the days feedback forms and you can get the certificates. Thank you all.